What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. My name is Edward Ornelas. In today's video, we're going to be talking about Bitcoin's price action since my last live stream about 3 days ago on Friday. All right, so there's a lot to catch up on, and I'm going to be sharing my personal thoughts regarding Bitcoin, stock market as well, and in regards to the coronavirus, right? How it's played a huge influence and how I see things personally panning out. So if you're interested in that, guys, be sure to subscribe and let's just get right into it. All right, guys. So as right now, as you guys can see, I have Bitcoin's chart pulled up here on the 4 hourly, and we're going to be talking about recapping on its price action, and I'll be giving my personal thoughts on what's going on, and then afterwards I'll get into some different thoughts also regarding what I talked about, the coronavirus and the stock market as well, how it's having such an influence. Okay, so anyways, let's get right into it. So obviously on Friday, we did end up seeing huge drop in price action to the point where it had seen lows of around $3,800. All right, if you told me a month ago that Bitcoin was going to be at $3,800, I wouldn't have believed you, because that seemed like an impossibility. But here we are now, and it's pretty crazy to see that we had gone that low, especially in 2020, right? Anyways. So what ended up happening shortly after we hit those lows, we had a huge surge in price action. In fact, we had technically around anywhere from a 25 to around a 50% price from its peak. It's pretty crazy, especially in a short period of time. And throughout the weekend, we ended up formulating what's known as a continuation wedge. I'd call it that, an ascending wedge. Typically, when you see wedges like this, and this is something to always keep in mind, they tend to be very bearish, right? Because if you were to invert this chart, right? So let me do that right now. Actually, I can't, not right now, but typically you can see that, it is a continuation pattern towards the downside. So any single time you see wedges like this, it typically signifies that there's going to be more downside to be coming. We did attempt several breakouts, from right here, which was very unlikely to break out. But also last night, we did end up seeing huge surge in price action. This was actually caused because of the interest rates, the 0% interest rates that the Federal Reserve had made, right? So typically that's not a good sign, especially because after we cut rates that low, it can signify that we could begin a recession. So that's something I will talk about a little bit later in this video. But that was, so we did have a little bit of a surge regarding that information. But of course, as you guys can see, it was I should say quickly rejected right off of that. And so overnight, we ended up seeing a huge drop in price action, right? Another continuation towards the downside. But see, this drop in price action to me is very important, all right? And to me, this changes everything. The reason I say that is because we end up getting what's known as a retest, right? A confirmation retest. And this is something that I always hammer a lot of times, is that I never like to buy bottoms. I like to buy confirmation or reversal patterns, right? Something that tells me, hey, this looks like this could be a turning point for Bitcoin. And to me, this is what's going on right now, right? So if I actually zoom in on the 1 hour, you can see we end up seeing a pretty strong reaction off of this previous low of around 4,500 range, right? So this general area, which propelled Bitcoin to possibly, to move up almost around 15%, right? So quite dramatically, which is a really good sign. On top of that, if we go back towards that 4 hourly, if you pull up the RSI right here, right? You can see that this bottom line right here. So if you connect this line from right here towards its previous peak, you can see that it's starting to formulate what's known as a bullish divergence signal, right? So any single time you see a higher high like that does signify that could be a reversal pattern, because it is printing bullish divergence. So what that means for anybody that's not versed in technical analysis, that essentially means that there's less buyers in this general area. And in fact, that can signify that there's more buyers. That there's less sellers and that there's more buyers, right? So that typically is a very bullish signal, all right, for a reversal pattern. So now that we have that out of the way, right? Now that we've already essentially broken down from this ascending wedge, we've had a bullish retest, right, from this low right here and printed a higher high. What does that mean for Bitcoin now? All right. So again, from this here on out, this is going to be my personal opinion, right? So just because I say so doesn't mean that it's going to happen. Do not take anything that I say as financial advice. So just keep that in mind. All right. But what I do see possibly happening here with Bitcoin is that now, since we do have that bullish divergence, it is very likely now that we will end up pushing above this general resistance and actually probably kicking into the next resistance, which is around $6,200 to $6,400. I know it seems like crazy, right? Considering that we were at 3,800 not too long ago. So for us to retest that 6,400 range, I think it's going to be very possible. I think that we could see that within the next, I'd say 2 to 3 days, at the latest, basically by the end of the week. That is, of course, if we end up breaking this general resistance right here, right? This line. Because that is right now acting as a barrier. But if we do zoom in on a, say, 15-minute chart, you can see that we're starting to kind of consolidate, right? I think ideally, if we get some more consolidation within this area, possibly we could eventually get enough accumulation that would allow us to possibly see some higher highs and eventually break out until we can retest that general area of around $6,400. All right. So now that I got that out of the way, that's my general outlook. I know a lot of you guys, especially in the comment section, are going to be telling me, Edward, the news is it's getting worse, the coronavirus, this and that. And that is true, guys. I know that is true. I know that, that the virus is still spreading. We're seeing a lot of businesses shut down, and that could have a lot of negative effects. But here's why I believe that we could see a push towards the upside temporarily. All right. This isn't a permanent push up. I'm not saying that Bitcoin is bullish here. On a macro basis, I'm just saying that it's bullish here for the next possibly week or so. I think that if we do, since we are printing some bullish divergence, that could be a possibility of a retest towards that upside. But here's why I'm saying that this is possible, right? So if you pull up the S&P 500, I like to utilize the SPY. This is actually, I've been trading the SPY for a while now. But if you pull up the S&P 500 and we pull up the RSI, similar to what we were talking about with Bitcoin, it's also printing some bullish divergence as well. Meaning we've already had such a huge sell-off that the people that could potentially buy here could prop traditional markets at least about a 50% retrace from its current price, right? So that would allow it to possibly see a high of around almost 280 or so. I think it would be very possible before we can get some top out formation and see some more continuation towards the downside. No market whatsoever just goes straight down, guys. All right. So just because we are in a bearish scenario doesn't mean that we're just going to go straight to the bottom, right? So if you pull up, let's say, for example, 2008, right? You can see that when we began to trend downwards, there was moment periods throughout the entire downtrend where we would actually end up bouncing like this, right? And then eventually, even towards the downside, we would bounce right here as well. So I do think that it's possible that even though if we haven't necessarily bottomed yet, or we haven't seen, any confirmation of a reversal yet, I think that temporarily we could bottom, especially here with traditional markets. I think we could see a huge push in price action before possibly seeing any more continuation towards the downside. I couldn't tell you if we're going to go lower, but I do think that possibly we could end up seeing some more continuation. A push up, then possibly continuation, which is why I say that with Bitcoin, I'm seeing something similar as well. All right. I think we could end up seeing a push again towards that general resistance around 6,400 before seeing more continuation towards the downside, or possibly a reversal pattern, which could possibly at that point take us into the next run up. Okay. So that's my general outlook for Bitcoin. I know that we're in a period of a lot of uncertainty, guys, but at the end of the day, I personally only trade the charts. I like to ignore the sentiment, fundamentals, whatever's going on the outside. I think that by doing so, I'm a lot more successful, really. And I know that's going to trigger a lot of people, because I've had a lot of people comment on my videos recently telling me how technical analysis doesn't really matter, especially during a time of crisis. I disagree. I think technical analysis always matters, right? Because at the end of the day, all you're doing is simply reading the charts and you're playing off of whatever it's telling you. So let me know what you guys think. Do you guys agree or disagree? And I think as the coming weeks, as the days come, you know, we'll see a lot more resolution, and I think we're going to determine if what I'm talking about here does come into fruition. If it doesn't, then I will most likely update you guys if anything changes. All right, so be sure to subscribe to the video. I'm sorry, to subscribe to the channel, like the video, helps me out a ton, guys, for the YouTube algorithm. And let me know in the comment section below your thoughts, right? Because I want to hear what you have to say. It matters to me just as much. All right, so with that being said, guys, I will see you on the next one.